let's start with the band and how you became The Who, and even the name The Who, because it wasn't The Who early on.
No. The music business that started way back in the 60s in Britain, what I tried to do in this book is to basically get you Americans to kind of understand the world that we grew up in, post-war Britain. Yeah, I was born in a V1 raid, or the day after a V1 raid, but my mother started the labour during it, only to find the next morning that half the street was missing. Yeah. So you can't imagine the world we grew up in, and this includes the Beatles, the Stones, all those great groups. London had been levelled, England, the big cities in England were levelled. So all we could really do was build. And everything we wanted, we couldn't just go out and buy like you can today. You either stole it or saved up for 10 years to buy a guitar and bought it, or you made it. And so The Who started, most of us making our own guitars. It's very similar to Keith Richards of the Stones. And this whole industry that came from the British invasion basically grew out of the rubble of the Second World War.
But when people think of the most iconic duos, they think, you mentioned earlier, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, certainly Lennon, McCartney, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and they also think of Daltrey and Townshend. I know that Pete Townshend wrote all the music, you were the voice of it, but the two of you sort of had a complicated relationship. I mean, you really fought like brothers. What was the lowest point for you with each other?
Well, it's never been low. It's always been very close, but like every good, close relationship, you're going to have your little spats. Yeah. And that's what builds your character and your strength for the future. And today, what's so wonderful about, we've been together nearly 60 years now, Pete and I, in a professional relationship. And we're probably closer today than we ever have been, and having more fun.
Lots of sex, drugs, rock and roll. Was that sort of, because you were sort of the more straight-laced of the bunch, of the guys. Was that where you guys, it sort of fell out?
And rock and roll, but that was the whole of the 60s environment. It wasn't just rock and roll. That was, that was the whole of the 60s generation coming up. You had the Vietnam War over here that was a great kind of motivator of people having freedom, And what I tried to do in my book was to kind of give you a clue of what it felt like to live through that period, what it felt like to be on stage at Woodstock. When on the news you saw one thing being presented, which was Woodstock was a disaster zone, and everybody had to fly in a helicopter because all the roads were blocked, no one could get there. The governor had declared it a disaster zone. And I just drove there in the back of a Beetle Volkswagen. And so Herbie went to Woodstock, and all that stuff on the news, it was fake news in those days.
Fair enough. I mean, I want to know, between the Stones, the Beatles, and the Who partied the hardest, in your estimation?
Well, I didn't used to party much with them, because when the drugs kicked in for me, it became dull for me, because all I wanted to ever do was to be a good singer.
At the height of the band, though, you guys were famous for being not allowed to to go to Holiday Inns anymore. What happened?
We were banned from everywhere, but that was
throwing stuff out the windows, driving cars into the swimming pool in Australia.
No, the Australia thing. But what you've got to realise that quite a lot of those hotels that Keith decided to remodel needed remodelling. And we actually did them a favour in a lot of ways, because they had to upgrade them. And, really, some of them...
Shatterproof windows.
Yes.
Roger has a new book out. It is titled, Thanks a Lot, Mr. Kibblewhite. So let's start right there. Who is this famous Mr. Kibblewhite, Roger?
Well, Mr. Kibblewhite was my headmaster, and I can't remember whether it was the last day of my 14th year or my 15th birthday, but he expelled me from the school. after giving me 6 strokes of the cane.
Wow.
Which was quite vicious, I got to say. And as he expelled me from the school, he held his office door open for me as I walked through. And as I was passing him, he said into my ear, "You'll never make anything of your life, Daltrey." And of course, you know, with the arrogance and all that anger of youth, and with a very sore behind, I went, "Right, I'll show you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Kibblewhite."
Yeah.
And I said it like that then, but what I mean by it today is I really am thanking him, because if he hadn't have said that to me, my life could have gone in so many ways, and it could have gone very, very wrong.
When you're 11, you're watching television, and someone comes on your screen. Will you tell us who that was and what your reaction was?
Well, the TV, watching television, it sounds so grand today. The TV in those days was the biggest one you could get.
Sure,
It was kind of this big, and it was like watching a very out of focus, negative print. But anyway, it wasn't just, there was a look. There was a guy on TV with a look that was like, wow, this was someone else. It was like someone had landed from outer space. And he was making a noise. He was singing in a way that I've never heard anything like it. Elvis, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, we all immediately thought, well, that must be the best job in the world to have. John Lennon had said the same thing. And we all immediately rushed out. Couldn't it not have been able to afford any grease or anything to slick, grill cream to slick our hair back, ran to the bathroom, got the soap, which worked just as well. and overnight, everyone of my age had a kind of imitation Elvis, you know, droop down front and slick back sides haircut.
Well, speaking of hair, your wife is the one we can thank for the full-on head of curls, right, Heather? You've been married to her, I think, for 40. She was the one who said something. You ran out of dippity-doo.
Yeah, but I was a mod. You know,
mold.
The Who were the first in Britain. We had this movement coming through. Britain was very, very, very fashion conscious in the '60s, and we were the band for the mods. And the most, Rod Stewart had the perfect mod haircut. So did Stevie Marriott from the Small Faces, and to have curly hair was really bad. I mean, like having scurvy.
Right. Branded you as lame or something.
It was awful. And so I used to spend hours and hours just straightening it, you know, with this stuff called dippity-doo. Anyway, and on the first night that I met my future-to-be wife, Heather, and she woke up next to her in the morning, and she kind of screamed, "Your hair!" Which my immediate reaction was trying to straighten it down, you know. Run to the bathroom and straighten it with the dippity-doo. And as I was going, I'm going, sorry. She said, "No, it's beautiful."
Aww.
And that's the first time anyone had ever said that my hair was beautiful as it was. And from then on, the dippity-doo went out the window.
Sure.
And I started to let it grow into what it became.
And by the way, your wife is Heather from the Foxy Lady, Jimi Hendrix
Well, she's
song,
Foxy
right?
Lady because he was chasing her for a few weeks before she decided to come home with me. And
She's gorgeous.
Stunning. She's a Foxy Lady. You did well.
She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. Yeah. And we've been together now 51 years.
Unbelievable.
And I'm starting to like her.
Yeah, you're just starting to wear on each other. Yeah.
What do you think of music nowadays? You don't see a lot of people up on stage with their own instruments much anymore.
Well, I don't go nowadays. I mean, I don't quite understand the music business nowadays. It means the live shows are everything to bands these days, because the rest of the music industry has kind of been stolen from them.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they can get 1 billion streams and receive a check for $5.
Yeah.
Which is insane. These poor young musicians are struggling like mad, and they're just getting ripped off left, right, and centre. I don't know how they're going to get to grips with it, but something needs to be done.
For sure. Yeah, that's why they're constantly touring.
Yeah.
Constantly
And you
touring.
are still constantly touring. You're just on the road all the time. Yeah.
Well, the singer has to keep working. You know, the voices, especially my age, if I stop using it for any length of time, when I want to use it again, it won't be there. And
Is that what keeps you out on the road, or is it you feel like it keeps you youthful too?
You don't want to hear me singing in the bath every day. Oh my God.
I would.
I would too. Any room, bathroom, study.
No.
Well, Roger, the book is filled with so many great stories. Roger's memoir, Thanks a Lot, Mr. Kibblewhite. My Story is in stores today. It is fantastic. Such a great read. So nice to meet you.
Really nice to meet you.